evening, good morning, everyone. I know there are a lot of folks joining in from the US as well. So pleasure to welcome you all. Hey, Ruchira, nice to see you too. Make time for us. Yeah, so I think we've got a very good evening plan for you all. We'll start with probably the highlight where Nishit, Srinath, and Joe, three amazing founders from our portfolio, all building rocket ships, and in Srinath's case, an actual one will talk about their experience of building deep tech companies out of India. And again, as Manish mentioned, we want to keep this a very interactive session where you get to speak to our founders. So I'll just act as a facilitator, just set some, just give the whole interaction some direction. Please feel free to use the chat function to drop questions. We will keep picking it up as we go along. And without further ado, I'll just give a quick intro about each one of them, and then they can talk about each of their companies. Starting with Nishit. Nishit, I've known for almost two decades plus. We were schoolmates actually, and it's great to see him building probably one of the largest vertical SaaS companies to ever build out of India. Nishit, why don't you just give a quick intro about yourself and Locus?
Thanks, Shubham, for welcoming. And Shubham was always the guy in high school who everyone knew will go far. Thank you for inviting me on the panel. I'm Nishit. I'm the founder at Locus. Uh, We are a digital supply chain officer for enterprises in logistics. We take over the decision making that's present in day to day, like route optimization, as well as long term strategic decisions like network optimization, which were typically inundated with a bunch of manual processes. We mimic the real world with our proprietary algorithms and simulate them with unprecedented accuracy. That's the value we bring to our clients, effectively giving them a lot of consistency as well as efficiency in operations. We operate out of India, Southeast Asia, and North America, and we count clients like Unilever, Mondelez, Nestle, Uniqlo, Tata Group, in addition to leading startups like Licious and Big Basket as our anchor clients. Thanks, Shubham.
Thanks, Nishit. Next up is Joe. She's a super senior from my alma mater, IIT. Great to see her building something that's close to my and obviously her heart. Recently, she also won a very prestigious award as one of the top leaders globally in the mental health care space. Joe, all yours.
Hi, Shubham. Thank you for that introduction. I'm not sure about the super senior bit, it, but yeah, we are, I think, one of the older founders, probably Manish's vintage, or a little younger than him. Uh, but yeah, I'm Joe. My co-founder and I, Ramakant and I are actually partners in life as well. And we've built Wysa as something that can scale access to mental health to everybody and to bring mental health out of having to be something that you get support after a diagnosis and with all the attendant stigma and access issues to something that anybody can just download an app on their phone and begin to get supported anonymously and feel heard. And that kind of a vision started 5 years ago. And for the first 3 years, we were a consumer app. And over time, building that clinical efficacy, we've been used by the Ministry of Health in Singapore. The National Health Service in the UK has given us their largest ever AI grant for mental health support to integrate it into NHS. And we have a lot of global clients like Aetna, Accenture, using us for workplace mental health, which has really been one of our fastest growing segments. And of course, post-COVID, behavioral health and mental health has become really big. So I'm dialing in today from Boston, where we've just set up our US office, and we're expanding the team here.
Thanks, Joe. And finally, Srinath. Srinath is one of the few people whom I have seen leave private equity and actually try and build a rocket space and move from the US to India to do that. Really, actually the only company in the world to have perfected the art of building a 3D printed single piece rocket engine. but Srinath will tell you more about his story.
Thanks, Shubham, for the warm intro. Hi, everyone. My name is Srinath. I'm one of the co-founders of this company called Agnikul, where we are building, small rockets that take small satellites to space really quickly. So, yeah, I mean, I can obviously talk more about that, but yeah, very happy to be here with you all. Building a rocket out of India is actually, in some sense, easy and some sense hard. Easy because ISRO has already done a lot of work, and we have the ability to, stand on really tall shoulders. But I mean, the hard part is, again, it is India, so there are a lot of challenges about building hardware here and building deep tech here. So it's exciting and very happy to be, having Pi as a partner in our journey, and happy to be here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Srinath, for that warm words. So I think I'll just kick it off, and this is a question that's always crossed my mind, right? Building a consumer tech app is you sometimes you just face the problem yourself, and there is the aha moment. But in deep tech, like what came first? Was it the tech idea and then finding a business use case for it, or first identifying the business problem and then building a deep tech use case of technology to solve that business problem? And maybe I'll just start with you, Nishit.
In my case, it was a bit of both. So we actually pivoted through a bunch of things, right? I quit my day job to start a B2C chat app. Then we built a women's safety app, and that's when we built Locus. The only thing we were very clear was that we want to build a deep tech business. We actually didn't really care where. Ben Silberman, the founder at Pinterest, once said in an interview, which really stuck with me, that the biggest step to start up is to start out. So that was my path. That hey, let's start something, and I was very sure that what interests me is really good technology. I was reasonably agnostic of the domain, and I kept stumbling till I found something.
Great, and I think Nishit has stumbled along to building a really huge company. I don't know if you've shared, but Locus recently closed a massive $50 million round led by GIC and Qualcomm. So doing extremely well while stumbling. Joe, how about you?
I think very like Nishit in a way, did not want to do deep tech necessarily, wanted to solve a problem that would put choices in a user's hands. I think for us, the motivation was getting something that a person who wanted to help themselves could, using the power of the mobile phone, just access it, disintermediating every other channel. So that was the mission. And initially we wanted to do elder care. And in elder care, we ended up doing remote monitoring and AI. That took us into deep tech. But from elder care, we then pivoted into mental health based on my own experience with mental health. But it was always about solving a problem. I think it went from solving a problem to understanding how the technology could make it happen, and then much later figuring out whether there was a business in it or not.
Okay. And yeah, I think mental health. If someone is starting in the last 18 months, I'm pretty sure they would have faced the problem themselves. I think 5 years back, maybe it wasn't as top of the mind for everyone. But kudos to you, Joe. And Srinath, how about you? Why build rocket engines out of India?
Sure. So for me, I think the core part of the passion itself, right? That was always in me. I did do something in electrical engineering and finance and all that, but every step I took only made me realize that I had to come back to doing something about space tech. And I was obviously, because I was in the US, I was drawn to what SpaceX was doing. In fact, it was one of the reasons I moved from New York to Los Angeles. I just literally wanted to be in the community, and I ended up actually seeing, I did a lot of networking because I always felt at that time that I was an outsider trying to enter an industry, because I think finance is much more forgiving, right? It is very willing to accept other people come in, but other industries are not so open-minded. I would say there is usually the flow is in the other direction towards finance. So I was doing crazy amount of networking, and I realized that a lot of people were building satellites that were like this big. You could easily lift it in your hand, uh, but they were all sitting in labs, and it was a little puzzling for me. And I used to naively ask this question: okay, I mean, everything is great, is what you're saying, but then why is the satellite here and not in space? And people were literally telling me that SpaceX was full, or they were not doing small, they were not able to take these satellites. The other guys, I think United Launch Alliance and the other folks in the US at that time, they were all having their own agenda for launch to space. So getting to space for small satellites really was an issue, and I heard it firsthand by seeing all these people during networking. And then it started off as a very what I thought was a very simple thing. Hey, we should just build a really small rocket to take a really small satellite to quickly to space. I had all these objectives that I thought would be very easy in that process, and that's how it started. And then the more I dug into it, the more I realized that actually it's a really big problem, and you could actually make a proper company out of it, and that's how things started.
Great. And Srinath has a very grand vision. He wants to build like the Uber for small satellite launches. You just order it on your mobile phone app, and within a couple of weeks, there'll be a small rocket engine sitting in your backyard and ready to launch a small satellite into space. I think one of the grandest visions we've seen in the Indian ecosystem. Yeah, so thanks for that. I think we will dive into the meat now. What are and obviously I think Sheena, you briefly touched upon it, so maybe I'll start with you. What are some of the benefits as well as the challenges of building deep tech companies out of India? And a lot of the folks on the call here generally have this question: why build deep tech companies out of India? So if you can just talk more based on your personal experience.
Sure. So on the positives, I'll first, at least for our case, I'll start off with the industry itself, right? I mean, India is a spacefaring nation, so it definitely helps to be doing this out of India, where things have already been done to a large extent, and we only need to do incremental work for a large part of it and bring in one big innovation, and then it's altogether a new product. That is one advantage. The other advantage is I feel like, I mean, particularly right now in India is a good time to be working on hardware as a whole. People have started to warm up to hearing us out. People usually also take India very seriously in space tech, so that is another good reason to be doing things out of India for deep tech hardware. And so as I get into the other side of it, I think I would put talent somewhere in the middle. There are pluses and there are minuses, right? Or at least a challenge, I would say, if not a minus. Getting the right kind of people is both easy and hard, I would say, depending upon what kind of people you're working, who you're looking to hire. Because there is this still that pull, I think, that real tech, forget rockets, I mean, in anything, the real innovation happens only outside India. Sometimes there is that notion. And so I see a lot of people just after they finish their degrees, they just want to go out, and that is already said, I have to do a master's and these are the universities, as opposed to thinking maybe you can stay back and actually also do really cool, solve really cool challenges in India. Either way, there is a positive thing there as well, because you have a lot of these people. We have a lot of really good people out of India. And I think the other, I would say, things are changing now, but when we started in 2016, 2017, uh, capital flow towards deep tech was, I think, at a tipping point. It was not yet fully flowing, right? A lot of people were asking me, why are we doing this in India? I have heard that question at least 10, 20 times, I would say, when we used to initially pitch to people, as if it's a completely wrong decision to be doing this here. But things changed after that. I think today, in this recent round we raised, I don't think anyone asked that question. So that itself is now starting to look like a positive thing for me. Yeah, just some positives. Would love to hear from other people as well.
And any specific challenges, Srinath, apart from maybe on the hiring front, anything else that you face?
Um, Other than that, I think, again, as that's what I said, right? There is a general, even amongst customers sometimes, maybe less so for us, but I've generally seen that core tech innovation happening out of India is, at least the general theme is, it's not that way, right? In probably like a, a services market, maybe that is easier for people to accept. At least that is a notion. So even when you talk to a customer, we need to break that view a little bit and show them that, hey, you know what, we can do this. So that inertia comes with trying to prove that real tech can be done out of India. It will change, I think, but right now that is definitely a little bit. It's definitely there.
Yeah, I think all of us on the call hope that in the next couple of years, it would be as common to build deep tech companies as it has been to build consumer product companies. Nishit, I think I'd like to just add one more sort of variation to this. What is the benefit and challenges of building and also scaling now that you've scaled to, I think, about 20 odd countries? So if you could just give us a view on both starting as well as scaling.
Absolutely. And in the scaling piece, I'll also pick up Naveen's question from chat, right? Uh, See, I fundamentally don't believe in like a lot of just pure demographic personality trends, right? Like that, oh, X country does jugaad, Y country does that. Sure, there are patterns, but see, companies are built by exceptions, right? So those exceptions can exist anywhere. Fundamentally, what is required for deep tech, right? Like at a very first principles level, long gestation cycles. That's why it is deep tech. There is a higher lab to market cycle because there is a point of time being spent in the lab, right? So fundamentally, what is required is a longer gestation cycle, effectively going back to patient capital, right? Most patient capital is also large scale capital, correct? Hence, if you are typically building deep tech, you want to build for a large TAM. I have zero hesitation in saying that the TAM in India doesn't exist. Okay. I will actually go on to argue how much it exists on the B2C side, but on B2B it doesn't. Happy to argue that on very first principle numbers, right? Very few companies have been able to scale beyond 10 million at 100% YOY. So TAM could have existed, but does it exist at depth enough that you can maintain 100% YOY rate of growth? You know, which should like a hygiene to qualify for a startup, and then do that. So it's hard to do that. So effectively, you do need to do it for a global angle. It should like either from day zero or as you are scaling. And I think this could be a difference between software and hardware. And because I think for software also it has been changing just in the last 10 years, thanks to the generation of founders who came just before us. In software, we haven't found all that of a pushback in selling deep tech coming out of India. If anything, sometimes we maybe even looked favorably, right? Like there the whole stereotype plays into the favor, right? This is our maths guy. So right. So yeah, we haven't. So I don't think that's an excuse for anybody on the software side to not be able to scale to international markets, right? What we definitely don't have, and sometimes are people who have scaled enterprise either sales or product 2-3 times to 10 million and beyond, because that's when they have patterns, and that's patterns is what helps you learn from failure. Success is too pure to learn, right? Too many variables. But so people who have done 2-3 times enterprise either sales or product to 10 million and beyond, and that would be one help in the ecosystem. But I think broadly now it's internal to the founders to not being able to scale. We're in a great place. Patient capital exists. People are buying deep tech, at least software from India. That's really not much of a, right? It may exist anecdotally but not much. Yeah, so that's my view.
And Joe, and for you, I think the twist is healthcare is a very country specific domain, right? The US has its own FDA process, other countries have their own sort of healthcare. So, with regards to that, what are the benefits and challenges of building a company in the mental healthcare space from India? And I know you've moved to Boston to build the US B2B business. So, what are the additional sort of like positives that you see while having a team in India, but also splitting it with the US team?
Um, what I've found, exactly as Nishit said, if I was to qualify deep tech, I would say it's the gestation period. And health tech is also very similar in gestation period. And when you combine trying to do deep tech in the health tech space, you have the combination of one, getting your AI to get trained enough and adapted enough, which takes a couple of years, and then publishing efficacy, which takes another couple of years. So you're really looking at something that takes 4 or 5 years to get to market at a level where typically outside India, it comes from universities. So in India, we don't have that ecosystem. So most of these organizations would come out of Oxford or MIT. And I remember in our early days when we were trying to raise funding, there were a couple of potential investors who were like, these things so happen in MIT and they won't happen in India. So we just said no outright just because they didn't believe that an Indian company could do it. And that only just fueled the fire, I think, for people like Ramakant and I who had just come back to India after having international careers. But even now, people ask us, what's the pedigree of your AI guys? And in India, we don't have that kind of an ecosystem when you can say the pedigree of my AI guys are this, where these are ex-MIT AI guys or these are ex-Google or whatever. And so I say the pedigree of my AI guys is that they built Wysa. And by now, the product itself has gone head to head with the ones that came out of Stanford and came out of Oxford and has been recognized as being better in AI than all of them. Now we are able to build that brand. So it takes, I think, in both the health space, you have to get external NHS, Ministry of Health Singapore, Harvard to actually say that you're better than everybody else, or to publish research on you, Cambridge to publish research on you. And then your brand gets built, both on the health side and on the tech side. And I think why moving here, the team, I would say that we've got a stellar team. And as Nishit said, again, it's first principles. You look for people. Those people might be anywhere. We have people in Argentina who are data scientists working for us on our Spanish version, and they're brilliant as well. But I think when you move to a country like Boston, two things happen. One, I would say a deep tech company is all about IP, and they do need to think about where they host their IP from future funding and exit points of view, because moving IP out of India is very complicated. And that does turn off investors. So where they put their IP, where they locate the holding company, all of those are important to look at as a deep tech company. And just being here, whenever Ramakant and I come here, where it feels good enough to be fighting against some of these much better funded guys, once you're in Boston, you feel like we're so much better than them, we should be crushing them. So just the founder mindset changes somehow when you're actually face to face with them and you're not just hiding behind the fact that you're so much less funded and doing as well at least. So just those are my 2 cents.
Sure. No, I think that those are some great points. I think at Pi, we are obviously very patient capital investors. And another thing that we've seen is that typically when we've looked to back companies, and I think it's been the case for all our portfolio companies, we've looked at global winners. We've not tried to back local maxima, because as all of you rightly alluded to, I think most of the TAM is outside India. So you can build companies out of India, but if eventually you cannot compete and win global deals, then you won't be able to create a very large outcome for the portfolio company. So I think that's been our thought process around as well. Folks, please keep the questions coming. Otherwise, I have a bunch of questions that I'd like to pick the brains out of all 3 of them. Before others put in their questions, what are some of the, and maybe I'll start with you, Joe, because now that you've moved to Boston, what are some of the key lessons actually that you've learned in actually expanding globally? So because obviously you started, I know the India revenue is very small percentage, but is there some significant difference in terms of buying behavior, in terms of other scaling that challenges or benefits that you've seen while expanding globally?
So from a revenue or a user base or customer perspective, we were always a global company. I think the big difference that has happened now for us, sorry, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The big difference that has happened for us in moving and setting up offices is having local sales teams. So we tried for a while to sell from India internationally, and we just think that we did it too late. We should have probably done it maybe 2 years ago, have local sales teams and local offices. It makes a huge difference. You might have a product that looks better than others, but if the people selling it, it doesn't feel like you have enough of a local presence, especially in a B2B space. then they don't take you seriously as a player in that market. And that's been one lesson for us, that set up a local proper sales team, not founders selling as early as possible. But it's also, you're trying to find a product market fit, so you have to really time that. I think the other thing is for us to really, I would say that it might be controversial, but I would say that flip your company early and make it a company where the parent company is based outside India. Because again, from a future rounds of investment perspective, that becomes a real constraint. Because if your market is outside India, investors, your future investors tend to be outside India, especially if you have a niche like health tech, where people have hypotheses around US health tech rather than global health tech.
Sure. I think, yeah, I think great response, Joe. And Locus, would you concur about, or do you have a different viewpoint?
No, I would actually concur quite strongly with what you mentioned. Right. Just another additional data point in internationalization would be Southeast Asia. I think that's a very interesting market for companies who have found a market in India. It's very, very similar in many ways. It's dominated, especially if you're selling in technology, it's dominated by buyers who are from Indian roots. So for direct sales, you will find like a bunch of your buyers to be from your same alma mater, either in your universities or your ex-institutes where you worked, right? The pricing is about 2.5x, I would say, on an average, and we have seen this across products. An interesting statistics would be, say, if you take the 6 cities, Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh, Manila, Singapore, Bangkok,
Kuala Lumpur, maybe.
yeah, right. Between them, they have 40 million credit card holding, internet using population, right? Like at the same level, we had about 18, 19 million. And all of these 6 cities are about an hour and a half flight. In Delhi, Bangalore is 2.5 hours. So Southeast Asia, I would just wanted to add that, like, I think much has been debated about the India and US markets, and definitely that's US is a very, very attractive shore. That's where a lot of our focus area is. But Southeast Asia has been a strong cash cow for us, and I've found that to be true with a couple of other founders as well. So yeah, just like about 2.5x pricing power with very, very similar set of conditions and similar cost of sales.
Sure. Great. Thanks for that. I think I have a couple of questions that have been just sent to me. So and I'll just pick one or two of them. Nishit, so one of the questions is that's there for you is that how are you planning on scaling up right now? I know you're already present in 20 odd countries. So one of the questions is, how are you looking to scale up even further going forward? And which are some of the markets that you will be targeting apart from Southeast Asia?
Sure. So we look at it in 3 sets. One is our Asia Pacific business, which includes India and Southeast Asia. This is where we have our current lead. We have a strong brand presence, and we broadly get invited into the enterprise deals. So we have a direct sales team, but a lot of our lead gen, like as much as 85-90%, is done by referrals because of our existing customer base, like, say in CPG, having Unilever, Mondelez, Nestle, in 3PL, having somebody like Blue Dart, DHL, right? Then you have the second set, which is our North America. This is our current focus market, right? Here, this is where we want to establish our leads. So for example, in India and Asia, we are always focused on more healthier metrics. So we would maintain like a 12-month CAC to LTV ratios. In North America, we are far more aggressive. We would go to 15, 18 months. This is where we want to dominate. This is where we want to establish a foothold, set our needs. So this is where we are doing our 1 to 10 million journey. And then third is our Europe, which is our experiment. And that is where we are running a small team of 2 to 3 people to basically get our first customers, get us to about basically 100K ARR, get the product live, get some referenceability, and then we will start building up a sales machinery there.
Great. Yeah, I think we're really looking forward to your European sort of expansion. I know Joe, we lost you for a bit there, but I'll loop you back in. Srinath, I had a question for you, and I think it's most pertinent for you. So what we've seen a lot of the times is that in deep tech, that founders who don't come with the predefined mindset from the industries are able to do a much better job at innovation because there is no incumbent bias. How do you feel about that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I actually fully agree with you on that. I think that, as a outsider, that too, for in our case particularly, I actually heard the problem directly from the people, even though they were not complaining to me, thinking I'll be solving it, but at least I heard it from them directly. And so for me, it started off there, and then only we thought about the product, right? So it was always a outside product for me for a while till I actually got into the nuts and bolts part of it. So all biases, all the what do you call it's the ignorance that gives you all the enthusiasm to go and do first principles thinking, right? You're not jaded by failures from the past. You're not in tune with what people consider is not possible. It's a blank slate in every way, and that's how we started. And when we started approaching, ISRO scientists and other people later, is when we realized, oh, okay, I mean, we are doing things quite differently actually. The 3D printed engine was a good example, right? Because an engine is considered, particularly rocket engine is considered extremely complex from the ability to handle high temperatures. I mean, there's so much going on in there and at such high temperatures that people feel that 3D printing is not for that kind of work. It's probably for prototyping and maybe for, doing small structures here and there, but not something that will survive, thousands of degrees of temperature. And we went into all that. Of course we knew that it's possible, but we didn't hesitate because we had not seen those failures before, and definitely that helped. There is that optimism that comes in because you don't know enough as an outsider to the industry. I do think you should have a healthy arm's length distance between the core team and the experts who are advising you. Otherwise you end up doing what the experts have already done, or you make the team get a little too pessimistic little too soon. Right? So we struggle to find that balance actually for some time, because allowing them to do it, it almost makes the team like, okay, I'm just building what the experts have already done. Or the other way around, oh my god, that person said this is impossible, why are we even trying this? And I get a lot of that feeling going in. So to make it a purely first principles based logical thing, it's good to be an outsider and have experts at an arm's length advising you. And that is how we operate even today. And I think so far it has worked out quite well for us.
Yeah, no, no, Sheena, I think we at Pi fully concur. A lot of the times when we go out and speak to experts while diligencing some really cool companies, the expert opinion is this cannot be done. Like, why even bother? And if you had to follow them, then we probably will not end up investing in any company. So I think the internal
Actually, I
conviction
remember
has to be built.
Manish telling me that when I was, I think first one or two meetings with him itself, he told me that. But that
Yeah.
I always take experts' view with a pinch of salt because it does come with that, the what do you call bruises of the past are reflected in their opinions. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I'll just wrap up this question, Joe. What are your thoughts on coming from a consulting background, going into health tech, mental healthcare space? Do you think that has helped you, or it has held you back?
Consulting was my co-founder's background. I've been an edtech person all my life. Like before there was edtech, I was doing tech product in the last dot-com boom. So I've sort of, but actually that gave me a good insight into, I always thought I'd build an edtech startup. I always knew I'll build my own startup, and I always thought it would be edtech because I'd spent a good 20 years in that sector. And I realized as I was doing it that all the problems of edtech by then were very small problems to me. I could see the trees and the really small, real problems of edtech. While in things like elder care and mental health, I could think like how do we solve for mental health, or how do we take care of parents remotely? But in edtech, it would become something like, how do we engage learners? And it wasn't inspiring enough, and I wouldn't get ideas that were drastic anymore in edtech. So while I did use my skills that I had gained in doing product and edtech and user experience and all of that stuff, and combined it with the new possibilities that AI could open up, because in some way it is skills building. What Wysa does, it builds your mental health skills, but it's done completely differently from how I've ever done any e-learning, because it listens rather than talks.
Yeah, no, I the first time I used the app, I was blown away by the sophistication of the platform itself. There was a question by Saurav, and I think a great question. Nishit, maybe I'll go to you first. What do you think are some of the macroeconomic and behavioral factors contributing to the growth of deep tech in India?
In macroeconomic, I would say, availability of patient capital, right? Like I remember, when I got seed funded, we were practically even pre-idea, leave pre-product, right? And I don't think somebody 10 years back would have gotten the, like, we literally got play money to see if something is possible. Then during even our series A, we had mentioned that we are still in the process of discovering whether something like dynamic routing is actually doable, and we got that money to experiment, right? Like true high risk venture capital, right? With a long enough gestation period, uh, all our early investors are still doing out their pro ratas over, at the 5-year mark, asking to return the capital. So one, that in terms of behavioral, I think when at least we were starting up, because people like Sachin and Binian, and and there were already some set of successes before us. It was easier for us to take that leap of faith, right? Like none of us had a doubt that could a startup be built out of, could we, coming from non-business families, build a business from India? That problem was already solved for us, right? So like there was already a path. We were the second, third of the technology generation also in. So it was, I think, just easier for us. So that's what I would put it on the behavioral front.
Thanks. And Srinath, how about you?
I think so. From a macroeconomic standpoint, yeah, definitely, there are more people willing to bet on companies like this, even amongst the investors. So, yeah, as he said, patient capital. I think that is definitely one big reason. I also believe in that. I also think that a lot of people from India have now, gone out, and probably there is also this trend of people starting to come back, right? And I mean, when I did it, it was still little more abnormal, but every year I'm seeing more of that happening. So I think that is also, at maybe those people are more willing to take risks, particularly financially, probably because what they were able to earn and stuff when they were outside the country can support them to just from a life standpoint allow them to take more risks, right? So there is one thing to have an idea, the other thing is to be able to follow that at least for a couple of years without having personal financial situation pulling you back. So I think that is also definitely a change that I'm seeing right now. Is this the entire societal status of multiple people who were in the middle class actually now being able to afford that, able to take that next step. I think that is there. Behaviorally, I think for me it is literally like it's not a coincidence that so many large companies have Indian based or Indian origin CEOs, or maybe first generation people who have gone there and are CEOs now. So that part has always been there. I think we as a probably, I don't know. I am doing the same mistake that people did, but Indians are better leaders. Probably, I don't know. There is that thing there in them, and now people are just having both the the strength and the capacity to take that additional risk. And once that happens, you automatically start seeing more startups come up, more people taking the formal route of actually quitting stuff that they were already doing to do a startup. It's always easy to work on a startup idea on the side in the evenings, and that'll only take you so far, right? And for me, at least, I can personally say that if I had not worked those 6-7 years in the US in finance, I would not have had the guts to come out and say, you know what, I have something, I can figure out, I have money to support me for a few years. I don't need to put a burden on my parents, and I can try something for a few years. So that, I think, is helping people now take the next step, at least from, out of for people coming back from the US or Europe and doing it.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think we've also seen over the last 4 years since we've been looking at startups. I think the quality of the founders itself has been increasing massively. I think Joe, Nishit, Sheena were obviously, I think, I have our top-notch founders, but people obviously spinning out of your own company, starting something. I think that there's a new mindset of actually building product-led companies out of India as opposed to tech-enabled service businesses. Joe, I have a question for you. It was messaged to me. How are you ensuring in mental health? Obviously, privacy is of utmost importance. So the question is, how do you ensure that that stays within the app and the user, and the information doesn't get misused?
That's quite critical. I think it's both critical from an ethics point of view and security and privacy both, but also from a legal point of view. And also from a signaling point of view. So each of these tend to be, three tracks that we have to, as a health tech company, take. So ethically, there is a line where it's privacy by design, which means that you gather the minimum data needed. Majority of our use cases, all of our, at least 3 out of 3.5 million customers, or more actually, almost 3.4 out of 3.5 million customers would be anonymous. So we do not know who they are. We might have a lot of data about what they're going through, but even personally identifiable information that is inadvertently shared in conversations, the AI will detect and redact, and before it stores on the server. So that's a tech solution to a product problem. But from a signaling perspective, then you get the ISO 27001, 27001 certifications, so that any organization trying to adopt you very quickly can tick that off. And then you get HIPAA and you get data residency, so that from a regulatory point of view in each country of operations, because there is still a concern, even if you're anonymous and private, there's a concern of taking data outside that country. So you end up having a lot of layers of costs and security and all of that built up when you are dealing with sensitive information as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very good use of tech first solution to the privacy problem. Remaining with you, Joe, I think Nirali has messaged a question. If you were on the other side, and if today you were to evaluate a deep tech company for investment, what are some of the, I won't say metrics, because it's in deep tech companies, metrics actually come later, but maybe what are some of the key things that you would look for?
I just asked Manish, to be honest. I am not an investor. While I like people who know how to do their job to do their job. I build products, I'll build product. If I need to do an investment, I'll say, Manish, aap baat kar lijiye, please. You tell me what you think.
So no worries, Joe. You can give all your hard-earned money to us. We will invest in deep tech companies. Maybe Nishit, why don't you take a shot at it?
I don't know how much better I will be than Joe, and I probably, but I think I would clearly lean on far more on the founder pedigree than their current exact idea. And while I say that, there could definitely be, founder bias at play, right? But I think in deep tech, basically your market, your solution, sometimes even your problem, right? But definitely your solution, your approach to solution changes so often, right? So that's why in general founder pedigree is important. I think in deep tech it becomes even more important, right? Like, do they have any demonstrated history to build anything, right? Like they could have been building in completely different area, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Srinath, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say what Joe said as well. Probably Manish is better to answer this. Only thing I can tell you one thing that, what I thought was the one, you know, strength in me that helped me get through, right? So I'll just talk about that as opposed to generally, like, telling how to evaluate an idea or anything. Probably it's going to be about just a grit and determination to get through. You do see, I mean, deep tech startups are harder than non-deep tech startups, I think. So it just takes that much more from the founder. So I would probably, if at all, the one metric I can think of right now is how much, what is the resilience the vendor, the founder is able to show when he's dealing with, when he's dealing with even fundraising, right? And from there it just goes through everything in the product and dealing with all the other stakeholders. He's just resilience all the way. So I'll just look for that in the founder. I think Nishit was right. Exact product and all that can be morphed a little, but yeah, founder attributes are probably the one thing that don't change. And within that, in deep tech, I think resilience is probably little more important than in other places.
That is so true. I think you have to be resilient to build companies with 3 to 4 year gestation periods. Not everyone has the mindset to do that. I think Ameya has a very interesting question, right? In the last 12 months, at least, there has been a frenzy on the consumer tech space with all the large funding rounds flowing in, with all the IPOs and SPACs happening. How do you stay motivated? How do you keep your team motivated and not get distracted by all that's happening around? And maybe Joe, you can start, and then I'll take Nishit's opinion on this.
I've actually asked my investors to stop sending us mails telling us what all is happening. Like, for a little bit, can we not have to raise or hear about who else is raising and just do what we started out to do? But yeah, it does mess with the mind sometimes. And when you see, pre-product market fit companies raising much more than you, or people going to SPAC. I mean, Pair went to SPAC at a revenue that's less than us. And then it makes you think, or Wobot, it makes you think that, okay, we're a better product. Should we be going FDA? Should we be going in a different route? To some extent, you do have to evaluate that, and then you have to put it in a box and take that strategy. And remember, it's 90% execution and only 10% strategy. So once you've revisited it, you commit and you just keep going, and then ask the investors to stop sending you mails.
Yeah, Joe, point well taken. We won't send you any information about mental health companies. Nishit, how do you look at the space?
I think it's good. Like even if even even if it is a distraction, it will soon become an opportunity for us also, right? SPACs could become another route for us. By the way, which I think might be especially relevant for deep tech companies, right? Uh, because of the public market ability to understand long-term implications on, right? That is why a lot of R&D companies do remain private for a really, really long time. And SPAC provides an alternative route to liquidity without as much public scrutiny and focus on Q results, while maintaining a focus on YOY R&D leading to revenue, right? Second, with the fact that companies like Zomato and all are IPOing, right? Like this clearly demonstrates ability as a demographic of the founders to build and produce results. Uh, a lot of founders I know personally have who are under negotiations of fundraising right now have gotten higher leverage, right? Like literally in the week that Zomato did IPO without changing anything in their company, right? So from a founder perspective, I really can't complain. What's definitely sometimes annoying is you know a, a good person on a good project leaving to build an internal tool for a few more lakhs, right? Attrition. Uh, but I think so. This has once happened before in 2017-18 as well, and I think often they become good short-term filters. They lead to some pain, but after that you're left with you know your high potential team members, right? uh, so yeah, I think it comes with with a little bit of distraction and disruptions, but overall I would say it's all positive for a founder running a team out of India.
Yeah. Great. So I hope none of you are getting distracted by seeing the consumer tech valuations soaring through the roof. Uh, I think,
I think deep tech valuations are through the roof also, right?
yeah,
Like,
even
and
deep tech
I am
valuations.
someone who has so like we are all people who have benefited from it as well, right?
Sure.
Uh, so, but yeah, I mean, I think there is leverage.
So I think I'll come to Shivani's question. I think Ishna's question, I think because you touched upon the talent bit, so Nishit, that I'll let you answer and then maybe get Sheena's opinion. How do you retain talent in this sort of frenzied environment where people are either switching because, as you mentioned, of a few more lakhs, or everyone now wants to become an entrepreneur because there is enough liquidity out in the market, so everyone seems to be getting funded. So how do you retain top talent?
Oh, in our welcome email to our team, the last line is that one of the definitive cultural metrics we will measure at Locus is how many people will start up from here, right? My first couple of folks, they had these are proud Locus shareholders, 4 years fully vested shares. I wrote their first check, helped them raise the remaining seed round as well. I think it's great that every Gen Z person wants to become an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, I cannot absolutely have any issue with that. In general, on the other side of talent retention, I think, and we have spent a lot of effort around this in the last 6 months. One thing which is really striking, and for here, once I would actually use the word Gen Z, right? Uh, we have been, at least I have been personally enamored by the value of purpose to the younger folks, right? uh, and I'm specifically talking younger folks for like, and again, I'm feeling wise, as a 30-year-old talking about younger folks, but still, I think it's amazing. And I think it's the fiduciary duty now of every organization to further make their team members realize their value of purpose, right? Because these 23, 24-year-olds, like there are some, who just care about the numerical numbers, but then there are very people who are very, see, because now as a society, they're sure that, they will get a 12 LPA job if nothing else, right? So they have the optionality, and they truly care about the purpose, right? Like, and if every person in the team is able to answer two questions, right? How is their work helping their team, and how is their team helping the company? I think that retention chain is becoming the strongest. So that's one new, like, I won't say new, but that's one focus area we have recently found, have been working on, and have seen tangible quantifiable results of making everyone both realize and communicating and verbalizing their purpose, right? That's been broadly our lever around retention over anything else, from package to perks to referrals to anything else.
Oh, those are two very deep but very simple questions. Thanks for sharing that. I think I will now ask all of our founders to also get this into their sort of weekly or monthly meetings. Srinath, how about you? How are you able to retain talent? Especially, I know you are hardware, but you need software as well, and the software salaries are never ending. But so how are you able to retain talent?
So I think it's really about talking about more about the vision, right? I think, as Nishit rightly said, every one of these people can definitely get a job outside as well, and they're choosing a harder path. So first, I think it's important to identify that at the recruitment level itself, because I think when the candidate comes to, like, say me or my other co-founder Moin for final round of interviews, that's the only question we actually spend a lot of time on. Why Agnikul? Why startups? Nothing more than that, because I think if the why is clear, it is much lesser of an effort from your side, and they themselves are already aligned and they see something in the company that we don't have to sell it to them, right? So that is there. Other thing is space tech is still cool. Definitely SpaceX is doing its thing there, and that translates here. We have a lot of people who just love the idea of space tech. So I think that definitely helps. And I'm just generalizing that as the vision also, right? About making this Uber service of space, making anyone want to be able to, say for a birthday, put something in space and then bring it back and give it to your, your kid or whatever, your niece or something, right? I think those kind of opportunities actually still hold people back. It's definitely not about competing with bigger players on salaries or hiring people who don't have the entrepreneurial mindset. I think actually people with the entrepreneurial mindset are better off working in an organization because they're able to handle all the firefighting that comes with startups, right? And it's just that you don't hire people only who can do this, and if that person can naturally evolve to take care of all of the smaller fires that usually are around any particular day, that helps me and other people at the co-founder level focus on long-term strategy. So we actually prefer people with an entrepreneurial spirit, uh, but if they're aligned on the vision, then I think retaining them is not a big challenge or anything by itself. I basically taken the problem out of retaining and put it on the hiring, I think, which is why our ratios of hiring are like really, really, like 1 in 70, 1 in 80. It's become endless set of interviews, and then only one person gets that role. So that's how we are dealing with it.
But I think that's a having a high barrier and a strong filter, and then obviously having a strong vision to support. I think those are the key critical parameters, at least for early stage. I think I had a question, and Joe, I think maybe you wouldn't like this question, but I think just typically the one of the questions that I think a lot of the investors in deep tech have is, how are deep tech companies going to exit? Who's going to buy you? How are the founders looking at? So from a forget the investor perspective, how do the founders think about that 5, 10, 15 years later? How do you foresee Wysa being, and what are the potential exit opportunities that you see for Wysa?
I think it's not a difficult conversation. It's a conversation we have with our investors very regularly. And I think anybody coming into a space, and especially a deep tech space, which means that by the time you have traction, you're already like a 6, 7 year old company. So you do have to have an exit plan in mind. Now, you might decide that you're going to do it in 5 years' time, or you're going to do it. So really, there are two exits that we can see. It's a SPAC or IPO type of exit, or it is an acquisition by another player. And the behavioral health space, both are very hot. So both are well trodden now, did not exist even 3 years ago, but today, the multiples are huge, even in the acquisitions. Everybody is looking for a digital behavioral health um, opportunity. And we continuously scan the market to say who would we potentially partner with, um, and who might be a strategic investor today but might be an exit tomorrow. That doesn't mean that we chase an exit, because we definitely not done in how much growth we can have. We're just hiring a US sales team, and if without a US sales team we could have this kind of growth, then what would we do with it? So we're just on the brink of this explosive growth. But post that explosive growth, there have been a good traction of companies that have been acquired, at unicorn level, at 300, $400 million level. And there have been companies who have gone to SPAC, and both are good options for us.
Right, yeah. I know we are definitely tracking the mental healthcare exit space, Joe. But I think yeah, you're right. I think the behavioral health in itself is going to be such a big industry in the next 3 to 5 years. I think the options will open up automatically. Nishit, because I think you've scaled up. How do you even think about this question, the exit question, and if yes, how do you look at it?
I mean, yes, like a lot of toys that you're interested in are very, very expensive. Right? But jokes apart, like what I mean to say is, like, just because like founders who like engineering, it doesn't mean like, they have no commercial ambitions, right? Uh, Having said that, at least historically, it has been easier for deep tech B2B companies to exit than for B2C companies to exit, right? I'm not talking about like a 99.9 percentile, but I'm talking say like a 90 percentile, right? Same for us. And that's why I mentioned that, for all the distractions these IPOs and SPAC brings in, like these are alternate liquidity routes for everyone, right? Uh, for for a small set of investors to truly understand you and get you retail level of liquidity. Also, deep tech companies are really good acquisition targets across sizes, and they happen with a large amount of velocity all around, right? Like, for example, like like Jyoti Bansal selling App Dynamics for 4.2 billion will never get close to any level of say a B2C press even at $1 billion of funding, right? Because you're not going to see that logo in an IPL. So yeah, basically, I just wanted to emphasize that it's neither rare, keeps happening, is typically easier than the other domain. I mean, exits are always hard, but if anything, I think deep tech B2B always has a slight edge to it.
Yeah, I think that's what we tell our investors. So hopefully some of them can take it from your word as well. Can take your word on that. I think Shivani had an interesting question on the deep tech trends that the panelists are seeing. I know we have a session on that coming after the right this chat, but wanted to get the panelists' opinion on this. So Srinath, what are some of the deep tech trends, either in space tech or in other areas that you are really excited about?
Trends, I think I've, at least from what I am tracking from my own personal interest in the company is space tech, right? So we focus on an area called space transportation, which is about getting stuff to space, and we're seeing every aspect of that come through, right from transportation from Earth to space, and space to space, and space to deep tech, deep space. Sorry, not deep tech, deep space, going to Mars and all that. Outside of space tech itself, I'm seeing a lot of buzz around crypto. I don't know if it's formally classified as deep tech yet, but it definitely sounds interesting enough to be following. So that is there. On the energy front, I think there's a lot to be done in batteries. There's a lot to be done in electric vehicles as such. Ability to get the price per kilometer for going from point A to point B on the ground with electric vehicles should become, at least 10x cheaper than where it is today with, regular automobiles based on internal combustion engines. So I think there is a lot of scope both in the core motor side or whatever the engine is for the electric vehicle, the battery technology, on the power converter tools, and so on. So within space, and then crypto, blockchain, and then finally EV space. That's what I'm seeing.
Right. Joe, how about you?
I think that's about the list. I would add there's been a lot of deeper work in gene technology in the health tech space. They're now actually finding genetic markers that can predict suicidality and mental health issues. So it's been notoriously hard to, and we're looking at potentially integrating with that ourselves, but it's been notoriously hard to find a blood marker for saying you have a mental health issue. It's all self-reported. So in our field, there are deep techs which are going in directions which you wouldn't imagine and by reading the newspapers. The crypto, I think, is what all of our tech people want to do after they do Wysa. I know.
Yeah, DeFi is the new word, and DeFi is the new AI. Nishit, I know you track a lot of trends in technology. I know you are a technologist by heart. What are some of the deep tech trends that you are seeing?
I mean, okay, sure. And focusing on deep tech, coming into production in the next 1,000 days, right? Roughly like the 3-year marker. So in addition to the two already mentioned, like which is on individualized gene medication and basically like effectively the second degree effects of the cost of sequencing, the reduced cost of sequencing, and second, it's a phenomenal time to build on blockchain, right? I mean, leave all the buzz at the core. The technology is just phenomenal, right? And it's a great time to build. So in addition to the gene and blockchain, the three other that I would like to bring to the table would be brain machine interfaces, Right? It's almost magical what's possible. You can buy today a $200 off the shelf EEG device, and over a weekend project, train it to switch off the light in your room, right? No invasive, nothing, right? Like off the shelf $200 components. Autonomous in B2B logistics movement. Autonomous is day to day. It happens every day at large scale, right? It's not a future, it's a current thing. And fifth and foremost would be quantum, right? Like things that Rigetti has recently launched last year is making it very, very close to production. And that could be like a completely new platform. How GPUs, made a lot of x86 algorithms, obsolete, and gave a new space for many algo startups to come up. I think quantum compute can do the same. So yeah, that would be my top five list.
Yeah, great shout out. Actually, one of the largest funding round for a quantum computing company just happened last week, Psy Quantum, led by
Yeah.
BlackRock. So that's coming along. I know we are running short of time, and so I have one final question for the panelists. Apologies if I wasn't able to address anyone's question. I know Ganges, your question about Agnikul's top target use case was small satellite launches, as Srinath mentioned, because satellites have been decreasing in size and in volume, whereas the launch capacity is still sitting at 1,000 plus kgs. So my last question is very pertinent, and just very brief bullet point answers. What are the top three things that you believe would take for India to become the de facto deep tech nation in the world? And maybe Joe, I'll start with you.
Number one, time.
Hmm.
It will happen. It's just a matter of time. I think what can accelerate it, perhaps, is definitely a lot of policies that can change around allowing, especially around IP and around taxes. So just the kind of structure the country does for making it a more startup friendly environment, so that people actually found in India and keep their IP in India. And thirdly, capital that goes towards India out. So anything that is deep tech will, as we established, go global. And that ecosystem of India out, there is a whole generation that is, and also not consumer. So maybe consumer, but generally India out is not consumer. So in that space, having enough people having been successful, I think in our space, seeing innovators successful, helped people believe in us. So having other, many more such organizations would create that self-efficacy. This is a confidence in your ability to achieve your goals. I think as India develops that confidence that they can do it, everything sort of convenes and it makes it happen.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. Sheena, what are your thoughts?
Three things I would say. First is more investors willing to support and believe in deep tech business models working out of India. Second, I think I've already mentioned the people, best minds of India trying to stay back and help startups and other companies out of here trying to do deep tech out of India. And I think finally, in the last two, hopefully, will become like a recursive thing, hiding even more people. So there's some positive feedback I'm hoping for here, which will continue. So more startups will mean even more startups. So that's what I'm thinking will push us in the right direction.
Great. Thanks, Srinath. Nishit?
I think in addition to all the great points already mentioned, only thing I would like to bring up is university industry linkage, right? Universities are a great place to nourish deep tech. The cost structures are exceptionally favorable, right? Uh, we personally run a lot of projects with bits, and it turns out to be very, very cost effective, right? So yeah, just I would say in university industry linkage.
Oh, great. I think policy capital, I think at Pi, we will take care of that. I think in terms of setting up examples and building the positive feedback loop, I think Locus, Wysa, Agnikul are all doing their bit. And I think you guys will be the forebearers or flag bearers for the next generation of deep tech entrepreneurs. who will hopefully look at you and then say, we want to replicate that. So thank you, Srinath, Nishit, Joe, for joining in for this chat. It was lovely hosting you.